Welcome to Love Lies Chronicles.
It started with an ordinary Tuesday. Nothing unusual. I came home about 40 minutes earlier than I normally would, thanks to a canceled client meeting. The streets were clear, the air had that crisp, late autumn bite to it, and for once, I didn't feel drained walking through the door. I figured I'd surprise her with takeout from her favorite Thai place, and maybe we'd eat early, catch up, talk like we used to, something we hadn't done in months. Our house was quiet when I stepped inside. No TV, no music playing. Just the faint hum of the refrigerator and the soft creak of wood under my shoes. I set the bags down in the kitchen, shrugged off my coat, and was about to call out when I heard a voice. Hers. Low, almost conspiratorial, coming from behind the cracked door of our office at the end of the hall. "I don't know," she said, her voice tight with irritation. "Sometimes I wish he'd just disappear." I froze. My breath caught halfway in my throat. She was talking to someone. Her tone was off, not joking. Flat. Cold. Like she'd thought about it before. My hand instinctively moved toward the door, but I stopped myself. I leaned silently against the hallway wall, just out of sight, waiting, listening. A moment passed. No laughter. No gasp of exaggerated sympathy. Just a sigh from whoever she was speaking to, a man, based on the deep voice that followed. I couldn't make out his words, but I caught the tone. Reassuring. Familiar. I turned away from the door. She said she wished I'd disappear? I left the takeout on the counter, grabbed my coat, and slipped out without making a sound. No parting words. Just vanished, like she said she wanted. At first, I didn't even know where I was going. I just drove. One turn after another, no direction, just distance. My phone buzzed once, probably a spam call. I ended up at a lakeside motel an hour out of the city. The kind of place people forget exists unless they're looking to disappear for a night. No questions asked. I paid cash. The room smelled faintly of mildew and pine-scented cleaner, and the bed creaked if you looked at it wrong. But I didn't care. I sat there on the edge of it, staring at nothing, running her words over and over in my mind. Not the tone, just the phrase. Sometimes I wish he'd just disappear. I thought about all the times I had stayed quiet when I wanted to speak. All the compromises I made to keep things smooth. The dinners I let go cold while she scrolled through her phone. The weekends she vanished into girls' trips. How long had I ignored the signs because I didn't want to face what they meant? That night, I didn't sleep. I laid there in that unfamiliar bed, listening to the distant sound of water lapping against the dock, and I realized I didn't miss her. Not even a little. I missed the version of her I used to believe in. The one I built in my head. The real one? The woman behind that door? She didn't miss me when I walked out. She didn't even notice. But a few hours later, that changed. At exactly 9:42 p.m., it started. 10 missed calls. All from her. Then came the texts. "Where are you? Are you coming back tonight? Seriously, are you okay?" I stared at the screen, unreadable. Then came another text. This one longer. Frantic. "I didn't mean what I said earlier. You weren't supposed to hear that. Please answer. I'm really freaking out." So now she noticed. I didn't reply. I watched as more messages rolled in, each one more anxious than the last. There was a shift in her tone, something creeping in behind the words. Not regret. Fear. She was scared. But not for the reason I thought she would be. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't just about an offhand comment. Something else was unraveling, something I wasn't meant to hear. She was panicking because she believed I found out something she'd tried to bury. And now I was gone. That was the moment I stopped feeling like a victim and started feeling something much more dangerous. By morning, the missed calls had doubled. 33. Most from her, a few from mutual friends, and 2 from her sister, someone I hadn't spoken to in over a year. The texts had turned from panic to paranoia. First it was concern. "Where are you? Please just let me know you're okay." Then confusion. "Why aren't you answering? I didn't mean it like that. It was a stupid thing to say." And finally, desperation. "Did someone say something to you? Did you see something? Please talk to me. I need to explain." Explain what? I sat on the edge of that lumpy motel bed, staring at my phone screen, trying to decide whether I felt satisfaction or suspicion. Her behavior wasn't the kind of frantic you expect from someone whose spouse walked out after a dumb, thoughtless comment. This wasn't regret. She was afraid, like she thought I'd stumbled on a secret. I didn't respond. Because I needed time. Clarity. By noon, I checked into another motel. This one farther out, deeper into the hills. Different name. Paid cash again. I spent the day walking trails that ran behind the motel. Dirt paths lined with brittle trees, their leaves long gone. It gave me space to think, to breathe without that voice in my head that had become hers, always second-guessing, always undermining. I kept coming back to her tone, to the weight of that moment at the door. I knew her well enough to recognize the difference between careless venting and something rehearsed. That was intention. It wasn't the first time she'd said it. It was just the first time I'd heard it. But who was she saying it to? That's what kept eating at me. When I finally opened my phone again that night, I expected silence. Instead, I was greeted with a flurry of new messages. Her worry had evolved. Now there were hints of self-defense, little lines tucked between pleads for me to answer. Look, if you're mad about what I said, I was just trying to make a point, okay? It didn't mean anything. I didn't mean for you to take it so seriously. I was just venting to a friend. You probably misunderstood. I never said I wanted you gone. I needed space, that's all. And then came the one that shifted everything. You didn't find anything, did you? I read it twice. Then a third time. That was the crack. The fracture in her mask. She was terrified I'd uncovered something. But what? I scrolled further down. More texts, now interlaced with sudden friendliness, links to articles she thought I'd like, photos of our dog with captions like he misses you, and even a selfie with an awkward smile, as if plastering her face over a crack in the wall would hold everything together. I didn't answer. Instead, I opened my laptop and began searching through old emails, shared calendars, bank statements, anything I had access to from my end. I wasn't looking for proof of anything specific, just patterns. And slowly, those patterns emerged. Receipts from expensive dinners she never mentioned. Ride-share records from addresses that weren't work or home. Charges from hotels on nights she'd said she was staying late at the office. None of them alone were damning. But stacked together, the picture became clearer. She had a life that didn't involve me. A second layer to her routine, carefully tucked between the cracks of what I thought was our marriage. She hadn't just been drifting away. She'd been building a version of life that worked better without me in it. The kicker came late that night. A message from one of our mutual friends, Dave. He wasn't the type to get involved in drama. Quiet guy. Bit of a loner. But he sent me a screenshot of a conversation between her and someone labeled only as L. He heard me. I think he heard what I said. If he figures it out, it's over. You said he didn't suspect anything. What do we do now? That was her. Plain as day. And that single sentence unraveled the last thread of doubt. She hadn't just wished me gone. She had been planning something. I didn't know who L was, but I knew enough. She'd been hiding more than just resentment. There was deception involved. Maybe betrayal. The thing was, I still didn't feel rage. What I felt was colder. It was like waking up from anesthesia and realizing you were in surgery the whole time. This was going to be a dismantling. Let her wonder where I'd gone, what I knew, who I might have talked to. I was gone. Not just physically, but emotionally. And the best part? She had no idea what was coming next. By the third day, I stopped needing to check her messages to know she was spiraling. People like her don't do well with silence. The quiet becomes a mirror, and suddenly, they see their own reflection without the benefit of control or framing. She had stopped pretending to be casual by now. The messages were raw, unfiltered. I swear I didn't mean it like that. You have to know I was just venting. Please, can we just talk? You're scaring me. This isn't funny anymore. If this is about what I said, I'm sorry. Are you okay? Please. Just one word. Anything. But she hadn't called the police. That told me something crucial. She didn't want official attention. Whatever she was hiding, it wasn't just shame. It was risk. And risk meant vulnerability. Suddenly, I had leverage I didn't know I possessed. If I was truly missing, she should have reported it. But she didn't. Because she was afraid they'd look too closely. Ask the wrong questions. Uncover something she had tried to keep buried. That morning, I called Dave. He picked up on the first ring. You all right? He asked quietly. I nodded, forgetting he couldn't see me. Yeah, I just need to know who L is. There was a pause. A long one. Finally, he said, you sure you want to go down that road? I didn't answer. He must have heard it in my silence. Lucas, he said. Your insurance guy. You know, the one who helped with the roof claim last year. My stomach tightened. Lucas had been over at our house a dozen times. Once, he stayed for dinner. He and I even grabbed drinks once to talk about a side hustle idea I had. The man had been in my living room, sitting across from me, smiling, laughing, shaking my hand. I closed my eyes, pressing my fingers against my temple. How long? Long enough, Dave replied. I didn't know for sure until last week. I overheard something. I didn't want to get involved, but after that message, he didn't finish the sentence. I hung up, my heart beating like a war drum. So it was Lucas. The polite, polished, easygoing professional who always had a joke ready and called everyone buddy, like it was a brand. I started to replay every interaction we'd had. Just doing my job. The familiarity he had with her wasn't incidental, it was access. Now it all made sense. The glances I had chalked up to harmless friendliness. The way she'd insisted I let him handle our policies instead of the agent I'd worked with for years. The occasional, Lucas is coming by real quick. Don't worry about it. I felt sick. But there was more. There had to be. Her panic wasn't just about infidelity being discovered. It was about something bigger. The next clue came in our financials. Months earlier, we'd taken out a line of credit to cover a renovation we never followed through on. I assumed the money was just sitting there, untouched. But it wasn't. It had been slowly drained, small withdrawals, spread out, just enough to fly under the radar. I checked the accounts tied to our home equity. Same thing. Little transactions to an unrecognizable business name. I followed the breadcrumb trail until it landed on a property management company in another city, one I had never heard of. And the name on the lease? Lucas. Not her. Him. I leaned back in the chair, exhaling through my nose, letting it sink in. She'd been funding him, or he'd been using her to do it. Either way, it was clear. This wasn't just cheating. This was exploitation. They were building something together. And I was the bank. The fool. The invisible ATM funding someone else's future while being emotionally phased out of my own present. I stood up, heart pounding, and walked outside into the cold air. I needed space to think. For the first time since I had disappeared, I felt the stirrings of fury. Not sadness. Rage. That doesn't burn hot, but cold and surgical. I wasn't going to crash into her world like a wrecking ball. That would give her power, make me look unhinged. I wasn't going to confront Lucas either. Not yet. I needed her to think I was unraveling, that I was on the verge, that I might come back, might be hurt and desperate and weak, because that would buy me time. Let her keep watching the door. Let her fear the silence growing larger by the hour. But while she was texting apologies and planning damage control, I was laying the groundwork. I opened a new bank account in my name only. I pulled down all shared authorizations. I contacted a lawyer, not one from our area, someone out of town. Discreet. Efficient. I told him everything. He didn't flinch. This happens more than you'd think, he said. You're doing the right thing. I felt clarity. A kind of bone-deep conviction that only comes when you stop trying to make someone love you and start reclaiming the part of you they ignored. I sure as hell wasn't going to let them dictate the end of my story. No, that part would be mine. I didn't plan to return to the city yet, but circumstances shifted that decision for me. It started with a phone call, an unlisted number. Normally, I would have ignored it, but something told me to pick up. Maybe it was curiosity. Either way, I answered. Is this Evan? The voice was soft, hesitant, familiar but not immediately identifiable. Yes, I replied cautiously. It's Mia. I didn't know who else to call. My wife's former friend. One-time confidant, now more of an estranged connection after some falling out they'd never really explained. Mia had always been polite around me but kept her distance. The kind of person who watched more than she spoke. She cleared her throat. I think something's going on. With Natalie. And Lucas. I didn't say anything. Let her fill the silence. I ran into Lucas 2 nights ago. At a bar near the office. He was drunk. Sloppy. Talking big. He mentioned your name. Said he was going to be financially untouchable soon. That everything was almost done. Said the idiot had finally disappeared, and now it was just a matter of finishing the paperwork. She hesitated. I didn't want to assume, but the way he said it, it didn't sound like a joke. My grip on the phone tightened. Why are you telling me this? She sighed. Because Natalie used to be my best friend. And now I see who she really is. And because I saw the way she treated you, even when you didn't see it. I didn't respond. Because part of me already knew. Mia wasn't dropping a bomb. She was confirming what I'd begun to suspect, that Natalie and Lucas weren't just fooling around behind my back. It was bigger than infidelity. I thanked her. She paused again. If you need anything that proves what they've been doing, ask. I've seen more than I ever wanted to. And just like that, I had an ally. Unexpected. And yet, maybe exactly the piece I needed. That night, I began documenting everything. I created backups of financial records, saved screenshots of texts. I printed out every statement, every withdrawal, every odd transaction she'd made under the guise of household needs. The web was wider than I imagined. Mia kept her word. Over the next 2 days, she sent me emails, receipts, even voice recordings. One of them chilled me to the core. It was Natalie's voice, unmistakably hers. He thinks I'm stressed because of work. He's still so clueless it's almost funny. Once Lucas closes on the lease and the funds clear, I'll tell him I need space. That he's changed. Blame it on misalignment or whatever. He's too mild to push back. Then Lucas's voice chimed in. If he starts asking questions, we'll say it's burnout. People eat that up these days. I paused the audio, closed my eyes, let the numbness pass. So this had been the plan all along. Drain me. And they thought I'd vanish quietly, maybe even blame myself. What they hadn't expected was that I'd hear everything and do nothing. Not at first. They expected confrontation, a scene. But I had done none of that. I had disappeared. And in doing so, I had become the one watching from the outside. A few days later, I booked a suite in the city under a different name. Top floor. View of the skyline I used to call home. I watched it like a stranger. Detached. I met with the attorney in person this time. Brought everything, documents, evidence, a hard drive with all the audio files. He reviewed it without flinching. You're not just filing for divorce, he said. You're preparing for battle. I know, I said. I want the kind of case no one forgets. He nodded. We'll get everything in motion. But don't go back yet. Let them keep underestimating you. That's your weapon now. So I waited. And while I waited, Natalie unraveled. Her messages began to reveal the cracks. Are you ghosting me? You've never done this. You always come back. I don't even know if you're safe. I've been up all night. Just say something. Anything. Then the tone shifted again, more defensive, more erratic. I didn't plan this, okay? Things got complicated. Lucas made promises I didn't even believe at first. You've been distant too. You stopped trying months ago. What was I supposed to do? Maybe if you hadn't made me feel invisible. I stopped reading after that. It was fascinating, the way guilt became justification and then accusation. She wasn't sorry for what she did. She was sorry she didn't get away with it cleanly. But I had no intention of confronting her with anger. That would only fuel her narrative. In 5 days, everything would be ready. Legal notices drafted. Asset freezes in place. All communications routed through counsel. And one carefully timed delivery of the evidence, sent not just to her, but to her employer, Lucas's office, and every family member who still thought she was the golden girl. I wasn't doing this for revenge. I was doing this because the person she tried to erase, the quiet, dependable man she thought would always forgive, was gone. What remained was someone she never planned for. The day I returned, it wasn't dramatic. There were no police sirens. No slamming doors. I didn't march in with accusations or deliver some emotional monologue. I simply walked into our house 2 hours before sunrise, while the city was still wrapped in sleep. The place looked almost exactly as I'd left it. My jacket still hung by the entryway. The half-eaten box of takeout I brought home the night I overheard her still sat in the trash. But something else had changed. The silence felt unsettled. Natalie wasn't in bed. She was on the couch, wearing one of my old sweatshirts, wrapped in a blanket, face pale and eyes heavy with exhaustion. She hadn't slept. She looked up the second I stepped inside. Her eyes widened like she'd seen a ghost. Evan. She said my name like it had become foreign to her. Like she didn't believe I was real anymore. I didn't speak. Set my bag down. Walked into the kitchen and poured a glass of water, letting the weight of my silence fill every corner of the room. She followed me slowly, barefoot on cold tiles. I thought something happened, she said, voice brittle. You just vanished. No note. No call. Nothing. I drank the water slowly. Let it settle. Then I spoke. Why didn't you report me missing? She blinked. That one hit. Her mouth opened slightly, but no words came. Just a visible pause as her brain scrambled for a defensible answer. I thought you needed space. You've done that before, remember? After your dad died, you went to the cabin. That was for 24 hours, I said calmly. And I didn't vanish without my phone or wallet. You didn't call the police because you didn't want them to ask questions. Questions you couldn't answer. Her lips parted again, then closed. She knew I was right. She was hoping I'd come back confused, maybe guilty for making her worry. But that version of me didn't exist anymore. I know everything, I said. Her hands trembled slightly. Everything. Lucas. The money. The fake lease. The plan to bleed me out and then paint yourself as the victim. The recordings. The documents. All of it. Her eyes filled with a panic I hadn't seen in her before. Not even shame. Just raw, undiluted fear. It wasn't like that. Evan, I swear it. It was exactly like that, I interrupted. You underestimated me. You always have. I didn't mean for it to go this far, she tried. I was confused. Lucas, he manipulated me too, you have to understand. I shook my head. No. You knew exactly what you were doing. You just thought I'd never find out. Or worse, that I'd forgive you. Her face crumpled, just slightly. I was scared. You should be. I placed the manila envelope on the kitchen island. Inside, copies of every receipt, text exchange, email thread, and audio file. All neatly cataloged. All admissible. She stared at it like it was a bomb. I'm not yelling, I continued. I'm not breaking anything. Because I don't need to. I already won. A tremble rippled through her voice. Won what? Freedom. Clarity. The things you spent the last 2 years slowly taking from me. You don't have that power anymore. She looked down, then up again. Her voice softer now, a last-ditch effort to salvage whatever image of herself she could. I'm sorry. No, you're not, I said, not unkindly. You're sorry it didn't work? I turned, picked up my bag, and headed for the door. You're leaving again? She asked, almost whispering. No, I said, pausing in the doorway. This time, you are. What? I've already spoken to your employer. They have the same envelope. So does Lucas's firm. So does your sister. The lawyer will be by later with a formal separation order. The account accesses have been revoked. The cards are canceled. The equity line is frozen. Everything tied to me is untouchable now. You can't do that, she said, her voice cracking. I already did. She stood there, stunned. I'll give you until noon, I said. Pack what you need. After that, the locks change. And then I left. I didn't look back. I didn't wait for her to plead or explain. None of it mattered. The woman who once said she wished I'd disappear was now watching everything she had planned unravel in real time. Not with fury. Not with drama. With finality. Outside, the morning sun was starting to rise, throwing a pale orange light over the neighborhood we once called ours. I walked down the street, each step quieter than the last, like I was finally stepping out of someone else's story and into my own. It was peace, and she would never see it coming.
Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments, and do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel.